She does not say it out loud. She may not even realize she is doing it. But there is a moment in every relationship, every dynamic, every connection, when a woman tests a man. Not to hurt him, not to control him, but to see if he is there. Not just physically, but psychically, spiritually, existentially, to see if he has something deeper anchoring him, or if he will simply collapse under pressure. And most men, they take it personally. They get angry, defensive, or they retreat. They think it is about being right, or being dominant, or being appreciated. But it is none of that. It is something far older, far more primal, far more sacred. Women test men not because they are cruel, but because they are wired to seek out strength. Not muscles, not money, but inner strength. In the depth psychology of Carl Jung, relationships are never just about two people. They are the meeting of archetypes, the interplay of hidden forces. And in this dance, a woman often represents the gateway between the ordinary man and the deeper man he is meant to become. Her tests, they are not barriers, they are initiations. This is not about men versus women. It is about the unconscious energy between them, about how men are called, through challenge, through friction, through resistance, to meet themselves. Today, in an age where gender debates rage on social media and relationships are politicized into oblivion, we often forget the ancient undercurrent of it all. We forget that masculine and feminine energy are not enemies, but mirrors. And when a woman tests a man, she is asking one question with 1,000 faces. Can I trust your strength? Not the strength to dominate, but the strength to hold, to witness, to withstand. This question echoes through time, from Eve and Adam in the garden, to Cleopatra and Caesar, to every modern relationship where love becomes a battlefield, not because of hatred, but because of unmet depth. In this video, we are going deep, not into pickup tactics or gender stereotypes, but into the soul of the question. Why do women test men? What are they truly seeking? And how can a man rise, not with ego, but with depth? Through Jungian psychology, ancient myths, and raw human experience, we will explore this forgotten initiation. This path, not of conquering women, but of knowing oneself. And in doing so, becoming a man who is not afraid of the test, but understands that it was always the call to become more. Long before Jung gave words to archetypes, before Freud sketched the unconscious mind, and before the modern world dissected gender into roles and politics, there was something else, a silent ritual played out between men and women, unwritten, unspoken, but always present. A woman, the guardian of the threshold, a man standing before her, not to take, but to prove, not by force, but by depth, by steadiness, by presence. This is not a modern invention. It is as old as humanity itself. In mythology, history, and sacred stories, the idea of the feminine test appears again and again, not as manipulation, but as initiation. And it is always the same question in disguise. Are you strong enough to meet me here, in this moment of doubt, emotion, or resistance, without losing yourself? In the book of Genesis, Eve offers Adam the forbidden fruit. It was not merely an act of temptation, it was a test. Would he stay in obedience and safety, or step into the unknown with all its risk, shame, and consciousness? In Greek myth, Psyche is told she must never look at Eros, her divine lover. But curiosity overtakes her, and she lights the lamp. In doing so, she tests the love between them and begins her own journey of suffering, sacrifice, and ultimately, reunion. But the love is transformed only after the test. These stories are not about obedience or betrayal. They are about transformation. And they show us this. The feminine has always held a mysterious power, not just to nurture, but to awaken. And awakening rarely comes gently. move into real history, and the same dynamic emerges. Cleopatra, one of the most enigmatic women in history, was not merely a seductress. She was a queen who tested the men who stood beside her. Julius Caesar, the most powerful man in Rome, encountered her not just as a lover, but as a political equal. She demanded not submission, but vision. Mark Antony, captivated by her presence, was also challenged to rise to something greater, and ultimately could not. Cleopatra's role in their lives was not passive. She did not flatter their egos. She tested their alignment. Were they rulers or simply powerful men ruled by desire? The test was never just about her. It was about them, and whether their internal kingdom matched their external empire. In Jungian psychology, the feminine is not merely a gender, it is an archetype. It represents the unconscious, the intuitive, the chaotic, the feeling-based dimension of life. When this force meets the masculine, the rational, ordered, structured side, there is friction. But it is wholly friction. And within that friction lies the test. Jung called the feminine archetype the Anima, the soul image of a man. She appears in dreams, visions, projections, and relationships. She challenges a man to face the parts of himself he has ignored, his vulnerability, his shadow, his chaos, his fear of being seen. The woman in his life often becomes the anima, not because she intends to, but because the relationship awakens these unconscious forces. When a man meets a powerful woman, emotionally, spiritually, or intellectually, he is not just engaging her. He is encountering himself, or at least the part of himself he has yet to own. And this is why her test is so painful. Because it is not a test of performance. It is a test of being. Can he stay grounded when she storms emotionally? Can he listen when she doubts his vision? Can he hold his own frame when she pushes back? Not to destroy him, but to find out if he is real. Across cultures, this archetypal dance appears again and again. In Hindu mythology, the goddess Kali, fierce, untamed, dripping in blood, stands on the chest of her consort, Shiva. She tests him not with tenderness, but with raw power, and he lies there in stillness, unmoved, because his strength is not about fighting back. It is about containing her intensity without losing himself. In the Norse sagas, Valkyries are the female figures who choose who lives and who dies in battle. They do not fall in love with cowards or smooth talkers. They reward only the brave, those who walk willingly into the fire of transformation. In African tribal traditions, rites of passage for boys into manhood sometimes include being judged by women, often their mothers, aunts, or sisters, to determine if they are truly ready, not just physically but spiritually. Can they hold the community with their presence? Can they provide safety without tyranny? These examples are not about domination. They are about discernment. The feminine, in all these stories, represents a spiritual gatekeeper. And the test? It is a rite of passage, not out of cruelty but out of love for the truth. Today, we live in a world that has flipped much of this upside down. We talk about red flags, toxic relationships, power dynamics, and gender equality, and yes, these are crucial conversations. But we often forget the soul underneath it all. The test is still there. It has just changed costumes. A woman may challenge a man emotionally. She may push his boundaries. She may question his decisions. And if a man has no rootedness, no clarity, no direction, he will collapse. He will get reactive, controlling, or withdraw. He will see her challenge as disrespect instead of initiation. On the other hand, a man who has cultivated his inner world, his values, his vision, his emotional maturity, will not need to fight back. He will hold his ground, not because he is trying to win, but because he knows who he is. That is what women are seeking, even if they cannot articulate it. Not a man who is flawless, not a man who agrees with everything, but a man who does not disappear in the storm. And so we arrive at a timeless truth. When a woman tests a man, she is asking a sacred question. Are you real? Real not in your charm, real in your substance, in your presence, in your ability to withstand, not dominate. This is not a war between the sexes. It is a spiritual interplay, a dance that has played out since the beginning of time, in palaces, in villages, in sacred texts, and everyday love. And if we forget this ancient truth, we risk reducing relationships to transactions. We miss the mystery, the soul, the fire, because ultimately the test is not hers, it is his to meet, his to rise through, and his to thank, for she, knowingly or not, is calling him to become more than he was before. When a woman tests a man, it is often felt as an external event, a reaction to her words, her actions, her moods. But beneath the surface lies an intricate inner landscape, woven from unconscious patterns, archetypes, and deep psychological currents. To truly understand this dynamic, we must journey beyond the literal and into the symbolic realm where psyche and spirit meet. Jung's Anima and Animus, the inner man and woman. Carl Jung introduced the concept of the anima and animus, the unconscious feminine within a man and the unconscious masculine within a woman. These are not just ideas about gender roles. They are psychic energies, archetypal forces that shape how we relate to ourselves and others. For men, the anima represents feelings, intuition, vulnerability, and the realm of emotions, all aspects often culturally discouraged in masculine identity. When a man encounters a woman, he is, in fact, encountering his anima projected outward. She becomes a living symbol of his own unconscious feminine qualities. If a man has neglected this inner feminine, he will project his anima onto the woman in unrealistic or distorted ways, idolizing her, fearing her, or trying to control her. When she tests him, the man reacts not just to her, but to his own shadow. He fears rejection because it mirrors his inner fears of inadequacy and emotional weakness. On the other hand, when a man has integrated his anima, meaning he has accepted and embraced his emotional, intuitive, and vulnerable nature, he can respond to a woman's challenge with groundedness and empathy. He does not need to prove or defend himself because he already holds a relationship with the parts of himself she reflects. The shadow, what we refuse to see. Jung also taught us about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, deny, or reject. When a woman tests a man, she often activates his shadow. Perhaps she challenges his pride, exposes his insecurities, or pushes him toward emotional honesty. This can feel threatening, because the shadow is where shame, fear, and pain dwell. If a man denies his shadow, he will react with anger, withdrawal, or defensiveness. He may lash out or build walls. He does not realize he is fighting himself, his own unseen parts reflected back by the woman's test. But if he can face the shadow, he gains power over it. He turns fear into courage, weakness into humility, and confusion into clarity. The test then becomes a mirror, not a battlefield. Psychological theories on testing and boundaries. Modern psychology has explored similar ideas through the lens of attachment theory, emotional intelligence, and boundaries. Women testing men can be seen as a way to gauge reliability, to see if the man can maintain emotional safety, consistency, and trustworthiness. Attachment theory teaches us that early relationships with caregivers shape how we respond to intimacy and challenge. If a man's early experiences taught him that vulnerability leads to rejection, he may struggle when tested, seeing challenge as abandonment. But if he experienced secure attachment, he is more likely to stay present, regulate his emotions, and respond with compassion. Similarly, emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions, plays a crucial role. A man with high emotional intelligence can interpret a woman's test not as an attack, but as a signal of her needs and fears. He can listen deeply, regulate his own emotions, and respond authentically. Boundaries are another key concept. Testing often involves probing limits, seeing where a man's boundaries lie and whether he respects both hers and his own. A man who lacks clear boundaries may be swayed, controlled, or depleted, but a man with healthy boundaries stands firm without being rigid. He can say no without guilt, yes without fear, and hold space for difference. Mythology and archetypes. The hero's journey. These psychological ideas connect deeply with mythological narratives, especially the hero's journey. In this story pattern, the hero must face trials, temptations, and guardians before reaching transformation. The woman who tests the man often embodies the threshold guardian, or the goddess archetype, challenging the hero to prove his worth beyond physical courage. The test is not about dominance, but about readiness to cross into a new level of consciousness. Jungians see this as an essential passage. The man must not only conquer external foes, but also his own inner dragons. The woman's challenge awakens this process, inviting him to integrate his shadow and anima, to embrace vulnerability as strength, and to step into authentic masculinity. Modern science meets ancient wisdom. Interestingly, contemporary neuroscience echoes these ancient insights. Studies on emotional regulation show that men who suppress emotions tend to experience more stress and relationship difficulties. Conversely, men who cultivate emotional awareness tend to have healthier, longer-lasting connections. This scientific understanding reinforces the Jungian call to embrace inner complexity, not to reject feeling, but to master it. Because true strength is not a blunt instrument of force, but a finely tuned capacity to hold oneself steady amid chaos. The dance of projection and recognition. One of the most powerful psychological dynamics in testing is projection. Both men and women project unconscious content onto each other. When a woman tests a man, she is often unconsciously looking for something inside herself, a quality she needs mirrored back. If she perceives weakness, it may trigger her own fears of instability or abandonment. If he feels judged, it may reflect his inner critic speaking through her voice. The key is that this dance is not about blame. It is about recognition. When a man understands that her test is a call for presence, for him to show up fully and authentically, he can meet it without defensiveness. And when he does, something shifts, not only in the relationship, but within himself. He steps closer to wholeness. When a woman tests a man, the stakes are often higher than they appear on the surface. This interaction, subtle or overt, holds the power to shape a man's sense of self, his emotional world, and the quality of his relationships. Misunderstanding or ignoring these tests can lead to profound consequences that ripple through one's identity, intimacy, and even purpose. The fractured self. Identity under strain. At its core, a man's strength is intimately tied to his identity, who he believes himself to be, and how that belief is lived out. When a woman tests him and he responds with insecurity, avoidance, or aggression, it reveals fractures within this identity. This fragmentation often comes from unresolved inner conflict. A man might feel pulled between societal expectations of being strong and his own vulnerable feelings. Caught between these, he can become disconnected from his authentic self. This disconnection creates a feedback loop of confusion and self-doubt. The more he feels tested, the more he hides or fights, and the less he understands his own needs and emotions. The strength he projects may be brittle, a facade rather than a foundation. Over time, this fragmentation deepens. He might excel in career or physical challenges but feel emotionally exhausted, isolated, or unfulfilled. This hidden exhaustion is a silent crisis, often masked by busyness or achievement. Emotional turbulence in relationships. The impact of misunderstanding, the test plays out vividly in intimate relationships. If a man perceives testing as rejection or criticism, he may withdraw emotionally, become defensive, or seek control to regain a sense of safety. This cycle breeds distance and misunderstanding. The woman's test, intended as a probe for trust and reliability, becomes a trigger for conflict and mistrust. In many cases, men retreat into silence or numbness to avoid feeling vulnerable. This silence, however, creates emotional disconnection, a space where empathy and intimacy struggle to survive. Couples then enter a painful loop. She pushes for emotional availability, he pulls away, and both feel misunderstood. Without conscious awareness, this pattern can escalate, sometimes leading to separation or heartbreak. Career and social life. The ripple effects. The consequences do not stop at personal relationships. A man's internal state affects how he shows up in the world. When he feels chronically tested and misunderstood, stress and anxiety increase. This impacts decision-making, creativity, and leadership. The pressure to appear strong at work can reinforce unhealthy coping strategies, suppressing emotions, overworking, or seeking external validation. Ironically, the more a man tries to prove his strength through control or achievement, the more disconnected he becomes from the inner resources that sustain true resilience. Socially, this can lead to isolation or superficial connections. Men often report feeling lonely despite being surrounded by colleagues or friends, a loneliness born from the fear of showing weakness. This loneliness feeds back into the emotional patterns that began with the testing dynamic. Historical reflections. Echoes of the past. This emotional and social toll is not new. Throughout history, men who failed to navigate these tests often faced marginalization or crisis. Mythic heroes who could not pass their trials were cast out or defeated. In tribal societies, a man's ability to withstand challenge defined his place within the group. Take the ancient Spartan warrior culture, for example. Strength was not only physical, but psychological and social. Young men underwent brutal trials to prove their endurance and emotional toughness. Those who failed were shunned, stripped of honor and belonging. But even in these harsh contexts, the ideal was balanced strength, courage coupled with loyalty and emotional fortitude. Those who neglected the inner test, the ability to regulate fear, shame, and pain, did not survive the long arc of life's challenges. Fast forward to the modern era, and the stakes remain. The forms of testing have changed, but the inner drama persists. Men still face challenges to their identity and emotional resilience, though the battleground may be a boardroom rather than a battlefield, or an intimate conversation rather than a physical duel. The shadow consequences. Suppression and projection. One of the most damaging consequences of neglecting the test is the suppression of the shadow self. When men reject vulnerability, emotional complexity, or their inner anima, these parts do not disappear. They fester in the unconscious. This suppression can manifest as irritability, passive aggressiveness, addiction, or emotional numbness. It often leads to a disconnection from purpose and joy, a sense of being trapped inside one's own mind and body. Projection compounds this difficulty. Men may project their shadow traits onto others, seeing weakness or betrayal where none exists, or blaming women for their emotional struggles. This projection poisons relationships and stalls personal growth. Empathy, lost in the crisis of connection. The inability to understand and meet the woman's test also results in a loss of empathy, both self-empathy and empathy toward others. This diminishes the possibility of genuine connection and mutual respect. In the modern world, where connection and emotional intelligence are more critical than ever, this loss becomes a barrier to authentic leadership, friendship, and love. Men may find themselves isolated, misunderstood, or frustrated, not because they lack strength, but because they have not learned to wield it wisely. Reflection. Pause. The invisible cost. Take a moment to reflect. Have you ever noticed how being tested leaves you feeling? Does it stir frustration, fear, or a sense of failure? What parts of your identity feel most vulnerable in these moments? How might these emotional responses have shaped your relationships or your life path? Understanding these consequences is not about blame or judgment. It is about shining light on a hidden process that deeply affects well-being and connection. It invites us to see testing not as a trap, but as a call to evolve, to build strength that is integrated, flexible, and compassionate. As we move forward, we will explore practical ways to respond to these tests, turning them from sources of pain into gateways of growth. Understanding how women test men and the deep psychological currents beneath these interactions opens a path towards something profoundly empowering: the ability to respond rather than react, to grow rather than defend, to embody true strength that is both firm and fluid. This section offers practical approaches drawn from modern psychology, ancient wisdom, and personal reflection to help you cultivate that integrated strength. 1. Embrace emotional awareness. The foundation of inner strength. The first step is to cultivate emotional awareness, the skill of noticing your feelings without judgment. This means recognizing the moment when you feel tested, and instead of shutting down or reacting defensively, you pause to identify what is truly happening inside. Try this simple daily practice. Spend 5 minutes each day tuning into your body and emotions. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Where do I feel it in my body? What thoughts arise alongside this feeling? This kind of mindful attention builds your Anima connection, the inner feminine energy of receptivity, feeling, and intuition. Over time, this practice softens the edges of defensiveness and opens a space for curiosity. 2. Journal the test. Reflective writing as a mirror. Journaling is a powerful tool for unpacking the layers of the test and your response to it. When you feel challenged, write down: what happened? What did I feel? What part of me was scared, angry, or proud? What did I learn about myself? This reflective writing helps you observe patterns in your reactions, revealing your shadow and helping you integrate it. It turns emotional turbulence into insight. 3. Develop healthy boundaries, knowing where you end and others begin. Boundaries are essential for navigating tests with clarity and respect. Healthy boundaries are not walls, but flexible borders that define your values, needs, and limits. Practice asserting small boundaries in daily life, saying no when something does not align with your well-being or values. Notice how this strengthens your sense of self and reduces anxiety about being tested. 4. Engage in somatic practices. Grounding the psyche in the body. Strength is not just mental or emotional. It is embodied. Somatic practices like deep breathing, yoga, or walking meditation help ground you in the present moment and regulate your nervous system. When you feel tested, grounding your body helps regulate your fight-or-flight response, allowing you to respond calmly and clearly. 5. Dialogue with your shadow. Meeting the hidden parts. Jung recommended engaging in active imagination, a practice of dialogue with inner figures, including the shadow. Find a quiet space and visualize the part of yourself that feels vulnerable or angry during tests. Ask it what it needs or fears. Listen without judgment. This dialogue builds inner harmony and reduces projection onto others. 6. Cultivate compassion. Toward yourself and others. Compassion is a bridge that connects strength with softness. When you respond to tests with compassion, for yourself and for the woman testing you, you create a space where healing and growth can happen. Remind yourself that testing is a natural part of relationship dynamics and personal evolution. Try saying silently, "I am enough as I am." I am willing to grow through this. Even. Integrate ancient wisdom, Stoicism, and Sufi teachings. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what is within our control, our thoughts, choices, and responses, and to accept what is outside our power with equanimity. When tested, reflect on what you can control: your reaction, your attitude, your commitment to integrity. Sufi wisdom invites us to see trials as sacred teachers. The Beloved's test is an invitation to deeper surrender and trust in the unfolding of life. Meditate on the idea that challenge is a form of love guiding you toward wholeness. 8. Seek support and community. The role of trusted allies. No man grows strong in isolation. Building a circle of trusted friends, mentors, or therapists who understand these dynamics is vital. Share your experiences and listen deeply to others. This collective wisdom reinforces your resilience and offers perspectives beyond your own. Pause for reflection. Think about the last time you felt tested. How might these practices have shifted your experience? Which one feels most accessible or appealing to you right now? The path to meeting tests with integrated strength is a journey, not a destination. It requires patience, self-trust, and commitment. But with each step, you reclaim power. Not the brittle power of force or control, but the deep, enduring power of authenticity, presence, and love. As we come to the close of this exploration, take a moment to breathe in the full scope of what we have uncovered. The way women test men is far more than a surface interaction or simple challenge. It is a profound dialogue between inner worlds and outer realities, between the past and the present, between strength that fractures and strength that heals. These tests echo through history, shaping the very fabric of identity and connection. From ancient rites of passage to modern emotional exchanges, the challenge has remained. Can a man meet the test not with brute force or brittle pride, but with authentic strength that holds both courage and compassion? We have seen how misunderstanding or neglecting these tests can fragment identity, strain relationships, and erode the emotional foundation that supports resilience. Yet within these challenges lies immense potential, an invitation to grow into a more integrated self. True strength is not about domination or perfection. It is about presence. The ability to be fully here in moments of trial, to face discomfort without fleeing, to hold space for vulnerability without shame. This kind of strength requires courage. Courage not just to act boldly, but to look inward honestly, to dialogue with the shadow, to nurture the anima, to weave together all parts of the self into a harmonious whole. The practices we discussed, emotional awareness, journaling, setting boundaries, somatic grounding, compassionate dialogue, and drawing on ancient wisdom, are not quick fixes. They are tools for a lifelong journey. Each small step toward self-awareness builds a foundation for meeting tests with grace rather than fear. You are invited to see every test as a doorway, not a wall. Every challenge as a teacher, not an enemy. Through this lens, the tests women present are not traps designed to trip you up, but mirrors reflecting the depths and edges of your being. Remember the timeless wisdom from Jung himself. The journey of individuation, becoming who you truly are, is rarely easy. It calls for walking through shadows and light alike, trusting that every step carries you closer to wholeness. This path is also a shared one. We do not grow in isolation. The tests, the struggles, the breakthroughs, they connect us all in a web of human experience and growth. You are part of a larger story, one that stretches across cultures, centuries, and generations. So, as you move forward, carry with you a quiet confidence rooted in awareness and compassion. Let your strength be a living, breathing presence, not a fixed image or role to perform, but an evolving dance between resilience and openness. Ask yourself, how might I meet the tests in my life with curiosity instead of resistance? What parts of myself am I ready to welcome home? How can I build relationships with women, with myself, with the world that reflect this deeper strength? This is not just a personal journey. It is a call to reclaim power that is gentle yet unshakable, a power that can transform not only how we relate to others but how we lead, create, and live with meaning. Thank you for walking this path of reflection and discovery together. May your strength grow ever more integrated, your relationships more authentic, and your life more aligned with your deepest truth. You have just stepped into a space that goes beyond surface-level advice or fleeting motivation. Here, we dive deep into the currents beneath our interactions, the ancient rhythms of testing, power, vulnerability, and growth that shape who we are. This is a place for those who seek more than quick answers, a community for the curious, the reflective, and the brave. Because mastering your inner world and understanding the dynamics that influence your relationships is not a solitary journey. It is something we do together, learning from history, psychology, and one another. When you choose to subscribe, you are choosing to walk this path with us. You are committing to reclaiming your personal power, not as control over others, but as mastery over yourself. You are choosing to live with purpose, integrity, and emotional intelligence. Here, we explore how to set healthy boundaries without closing your heart, how to lead with compassion without losing strength, and how to transform trials into growth. We honor the complexity of human experience, the light and shadow, and cultivate the tools to navigate it all with grace. So I invite you, join this journey. Engage with these ideas, reflect on your own story, and connect with a community that values depth, honesty, and meaningful growth. Ask yourself, what would it mean for you to embrace your strength in a way that truly honors who you are? How might your life change if you met challenges not with fear or defense, but with awareness and courage? If you are ready to explore these questions, to grow, and to lead your life with greater clarity and heart, subscribe now. Let us continue this shared journey toward greater self-mastery, authentic connection, and a life lived fully. Because this is not just content. It is an invitation to transform, to rise, and to become who you were always meant to be.